A couple of scriptural notes before I get to my little meditation. If I told you once, I told you 1,000 times. Did you ever say that? Did you ever hear that? Do you keep track? That's an exaggeration, right? Well, in the scriptures today, Jesus is exaggerating. Now remember, we Catholics do not read the scripture literally. Many people do, but we do not. We try to look at the way it's being said. So in the gospel today, you heard that if your hand causes you to sin, cut it off, your foot, your eye. Jesus doesn't want us to take that literally. It's an exaggeration. And what he's trying to tell us is whatever leads you away from the reign of God, I'll get back to that in a couple minutes, whatever leads you away from the reign of God, get rid of it, because you're going down the wrong path. And then secondly, Gehenna. We heard that also in the gospel. Back in the good old days, when people would sacrifice children to God to appease an angry God, and that was very prevalent in the days of Abraham, like 4,000 years ago. Outside of the city of Jerusalem is the valley of Hinnom, and it was in that valley that people would sacrifice their children to an angry God. 2,000 years later, about the time of Jesus, the people had stopped offering children to God, and they sacrificed animals. And the leftover remains of the animals were sacrificed in the temple, you know that. The leftover remains of the animals were taken to the valley of Hinnom, and they were burned. And then eventually that became the garbage dump. And if you're familiar with the old garbage dumps, they were always burning. They were always smoking and festering. And that's where the image of Gehenna, the valley of Hinnom, began. And through the prophet, some of the writings of the prophet Isaiah, and particularly art, drawings, that hell became Gehenna, and that's where the fire came from. Again, it was a movement of thought over centuries. And you know it takes centuries for customs to change. We're still trying to change the slavery custom, aren't we? And it'll be interesting 100 years from now what the abortion issue will be. As soon as we recognize that the baby has rights, that more and more we will protect those rights. But it's going to take a long time for the thinking of society to change. My little thought today again is, in the first reading and the second and the gospel, certain people were not following the rules set by others, so they wanted them to be excluded. You heard that in the first reading. Eldad and Medad were not part of the group they were not in the camp, the meeting tent to receive God's Spirit, but they still prophesied. And Joshua said to Moses, stop them. They're not of us. And in the gospel, somebody was doing something for Jesus, but he wasn't one of the followers. So that John, the disciple, wanted to stop them. And I've talked about this so often, that in all of us there's a little rule maker. And that little rule maker makes rules for us and everybody else. And if other people don't follow my rules, that upsets me. That's human nature. Think about that. What makes you angry? What irritates you? Think about the people you live with. Because usually if they don't do things the way you would like them done, you get irritated. And it might even lead to anger. And I'm not talking about important things. I'm talking about the little idiosyncrasies of our human nature. Toilet seat up or down. Toothpaste, you squeeze it in the end or at the middle. Cupboard doors open or close. Dirty dishes left be in front of the television or in the sink. Who says that the people that you live with have to do it your way? What about people at work? Other people around you that, again, don't do it the way you think it should be done. Neighbors, their leaves blow into your yard. Other people driving. Of course, they drive like idiots, but who says they have to drive like you think they should? That's the gospel. That's what I said at the beginning. If you read the scriptures, it's about us. The way other people think. You're a Democrat, they're a Republican. That irritates you. It might even anger you. Or a religion. Some are conservative Catholics, some are liberal Catholics. That angers you. That upsets you because they're not following your ways. Jesus said, don't try to stop them. Moses, it's the will of God that everybody should be speaking for God. Atheists, people who don't believe in God, they might be doing more for God than we do. Did you ever think about that? Don't stop them. Just accept that example and try to imitate ourselves. That's what this is all about. The people that are with us or against us. Who decides that? Who's in and who's out in our neighborhood, our country, our thinking? Who decides that? We want to, of course. But doesn't God have the ultimate judge of all that? And so Jesus is calling us as disciples to make his presence known in the world. That's the reign of God. So many people don't understand that. The reign of God is not heaven. Oh, that might be part of it. But think about it. Jesus came as the presence of God to try to teach us God's ways, God's values, God's motivation, God's thinking for us humans, because it doesn't come naturally. And when we take on the teachings of Jesus, the values, the attitudes, the actions, we are challenged as disciples to bring that reign of God into our world today. The goal of life is not to get to heaven. So many people misunderstand that. The goal of life is to work the best we can to bring the values of Jesus into our world today. And as we do that, that's how we gain heaven. It's not the primary object. It's what results when we do the reign of God. The second reading today, we don't think it's about us. Woe to you rich people, weep and wail. We don't think we're rich, but we really are. We are some of the most privileged people in the world, but we don't realize it because it's so natural. Everybody has it. But as the rich people in the world, taking on the thinking of Christ, that's what it means to enter the reign of God. Do we concern ourselves with others that are poor, genuinely do not have what we all have? I read an article this week about the farm workers in California, people that harvest our crops, vegetables, fruits. They're now working in daily temperatures of 120 degrees in direct sunlight. The coronavirus pandemic has made the working conditions worse for the farm workers. Many of them were not given masks, or the employers attempted to charge them for personal protective equipment. Others reported that they were required to bring their own toilet paper into the fields. Because they're undocumented, they are less likely to report working place abuse. They said it's really hard to believe that we're still fighting for shade, water, and fair play, the most basic of things. Does that even concern us? That's the question. I don't know if we can do a lot about it, but does it concern us? It certainly would concern Jesus. And as we take on his mind, his reign, those things should start to concern us. And all the other issues in the world: immigration, racism, global warming, whatever. Does it even concern us? That's the question. Most of us say, not my problem. I can't do anything about it. Would Jesus say that? You answer it. Whatever you think, however you think Jesus would answer those questions, it's our challenge as his disciples to start thinking that same way ourselves. That's what it means to bring the reign of God into our world today through us. That's the challenge. Can we accept it?